Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. Here we'll talk to the leaders in technology, culture, business, and the arts. We'll cover politics, advocacy, motherhood, writing, mental health, and mostly we'll focus on hope. Join Kim B. Davis, author, playwright, radio personality, event consultant, professional speaker on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have Ms. Kimberly Simmons from the Detroit River Project. She is the executive director. She is also a Michigan fellow. She's going to talk to us about some exciting new projects, and she's also going to delve into the topic of history and cancel culture. Good evening, Kimberly. How are you?
Great. How are you, Miss Kimberly Batchelor Davis?
I'm great. All right, let's get to it. Tell us what's happening with the Detroit River Project. What's going on right now? Because you have a lot of great things happening.
Oh, the Detroit River Project, for those that may or may not know, is a nonprofit, based here in Michigan, in Detroit, to be more specific. And we are, we've been around about 15 years. And what is happening now, I guess, is the culmination of a long road. The centerpiece of the Detroit River Project is actually World Heritage designation for the Detroit River. And for those that don't know what that is a designation that comes through the United Nations and is actually a designation that only about 1,100 other sites in the world hold. It is kind of like the king of the road. And what that says, when you are designated a World Heritage Site, you are telling the world that the history that you represent, or the history that actually happened where you are, is significant worldwide. It's significant to everyone in the world, not just where you live or the state you live or the country that you live in. It's the whole world. So that's the centerpiece of the Detroit River Project. We are designating our historic Detroit River as a World Heritage Site. It's 32 miles of thousands of years of history. But what our focus is and has been is on the 100,000 known and unknown people that actually used the network known as the Underground Railroad. Out of the 100,000 people that used the Underground Railroad in our country and into other countries such as Mexico, into the Caribbean, Canada, 30,000 of that 100,000, between 25 and 30,000, actually crossed our river to find freedom. So the story of the Detroit River region is about freedom and justice, and the World Heritage designation is going to be based on that. So that's the centerpiece of our mission, is to have that happen. It's been a 15-year trial. People tell me that it's usually about 20 years. So I guess we're on track, if you want to say. However, there's other initiatives that have, over the course of the last 15 years, have actually gone on and surrounded the centerpiece. And one was a book project that was finished in 2016. The book is called A Fluid Frontier. Mm-hmm. It is was published by Wayne State University Press, and it is a special book. It's won awards, but what's so special about it is, beyond telling the story of the Detroit River borderlands from about 1812, after the War of 1812, through the Civil War, it actually is an international book. It's written by 12 authors, 6 American and 6 Canadian. So not only does it tell the story of the river, it tells the story of the river from 2 different viewpoints, Canadian and American. So it's a pretty special book. It's not a book that really exists in too many other forms. And out of that book, we are telling the story of our river. It's part of the research for the World Heritage designation. Then we also have something else pretty special that's kind of on the same, has the same wavelength, if you want to say, and that is we are working on an international curriculum, educational curriculum. It will be, when finished, and it's pretty much close to the end here of to its pilot launch in May, is we will tell the story of our river. Again, as I said, all 32 miles of the Detroit River, and its story of freedom and justice from two different viewpoints. So in order to tell that story, we have enlisted the help of two different sets of educators. On the American side, the curriculum is being written by the University of Michigan, of which you delightfully expanded on the fact that I am a fellow. I'm a fellow of the School of LSA at University of Michigan. I'm a community fellow for the Detroit River Story Lab, which is an initiative out of the School of LSA. And in partnership with the School of Education, with, in particular, his name is Darren Studhill. On the other side, we are partnering with an advisory board member of the Detroit River Project. Her name is Chantel Browning Morgan. She is a fantastic educator, and beyond being fantastic, I guess I would say that she's an award-winning educator. She actually was Teacher of the Year in 2015 and was awarded by the Queen through the Governor General of Canada the award for Educator of the Year for her winning nationally acclaimed educational curriculum on the African Canadian experience. So when the Governor's General Award winners are they're only gifted once a year, and she won in 2015. That's a pretty special award. She won cash prize and then went to Paris. I wish I could have been in her suitcase, but she is writing the Canadian story from the other perspective of the river. So with a little help from myself and a couple other members of the Detroit River Project team, we are putting together a curriculum that in May will be piloted by the Wolverine Pathways program, which is an enrichment program out of the School of Education attached to the University of Michigan. And they are literally going to launch it for 3 weeks, pilot it, see how it goes with their kids. And their kids are from 10th through 12th grade. And then we're going to fine tune whatever we find out about it and then relaunch it in the fall, hopefully in both the Detroit schools, several of the other schools along the American side of the river. And what makes this curriculum so special is it is also going to be launched on the Canadian side. The goal is that the curriculum will be in play, will be taught simultaneously in both countries. So the thought of this, what it's supposed to look like is an 8th grader in, we'll just say, the Windsor schools, because we are going to actually make this available to all the schools along the river on both sides, so all the school districts. But in essence, what we are looking at within the next year is, we'll say, an 8th grader on the Canadian side in a Windsor school will also be doing a lesson that an 8th grader on the American side, and we'll say not only in Detroit, we'll say in Grosse Pointe, will be actually doing the same lesson the same day. It's intended so that you can interact. First off, you need to know your stories. So we're going to learn the stories from two perspectives, from the Canadian side, looking back, and the American side looking forward. The story of the Underground Railroad is being used as a catalyst. So in essence, we're looking at what a story looks like when freedom has not been won and when it has. So that's two perspectives of what freedom and justice looks like, what it looks like to get it and what it looks like after you have it. So that has never been done in the world before. It's a one of a kind. The United Nations and UNESCO, the cultural arm of the United Nations, are very, very excited about it. We're excited because we want to make sure that we educate our children. Need to have as much information that they can be given to process life. We're in the midst of another, I'll call it, awakening, and we need our children to be able to process what they're witnessing and then take it, process it, and then give it back out, because we need to understand what happened, what is happening, and where we all fit into this. You need to know your story. You need to know the history. Everybody does. In order to move forward into a history that in 20 years, hopefully we'll think of as a forward-looking story rather than looking back. So that's kind of the two things that we have going on. We are having in July. We're crossing our fingers that we're going to repeat what we have done in the past, the last couple of years, and that is a international heritage camp. And basically that's we'll call it a summer program. It's for the month of July. We will spend 3 weeks in July with a group of kids, ages 10 to 17, and they will be taken through the many layers that there are of history that surround our river, starting with the French landing well, actually going back a little further, we're going to start with the indigenous whose land we currently stand on or sit on or have built upon, and take their history, moving it forward through the layers. So next will be the French, and then the British, and finally on the American side, it'll be the American story. And interspersed in between this stories, all the layers, will be the story of the African American, which plays a part in all of the layers of this region. So it's we did this camp a couple years ago in partnership with the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Michigan. Wayne County Community College at the time was a partner, as well as the Detroit Public Library, the Detroit Historical Museum. So we're going to try and re-up. Hopefully, we will get the go-ahead with the governor's office at this strange time. With all the cases going up, we don't know what's going to happen. And actually, the governor has not given the go-ahead for the state parks to operate, because the camp operates on Belle Isle, Detroit City Park, that is now run by the Department of Natural Resources for the state as a state park, and Milliken State Park, which is a Michigan state park, right off the Detroit River Walk. So we're going to actually, we'll hope that the governor gives the go-ahead, but as of today, the governor has not given permission for people to gather in our parks right now. So we're hoping that we'll get a go-ahead. It might be down to 20 people maybe, but nonetheless, if we're able to gather, we will do it. Otherwise, we are going to take it virtually. So we will actually be doing sessions online over the course of July. And it's still, whether we do it virtually or whether we're outdoors amongst each other, it's still pretty exciting to actually get the kids together and learn their story. I love to tell the story of this region. I love to give their kids their history, because in order for the kids to understand who they are, they really, really need to know the history of the place they are from. Now, knowing your history from other places is great. However, knowing your own personal history from where you come from and why you're here and why maybe your parents came here or your grandparents, why they're here is really, really significant in understanding what happens around you. So we're going to hope that the camp comes off outdoors, because who wants to be indoors in July? We've done that. Wasn't a pretty party. We want to try another party. So we're going to try and start another party on the outdoors this time, but we'll see. But until the governor gives us a go ahead, we're going to, right now we're heading toward virtual, especially with the fact that in the last couple of weeks, our COVID-19 numbers have gone up dramatically. And I probably want to blame that a lot on the spring breakers that I wasn't a part of. And those spring breakers were out there breaking and brought it all back with us. So here we are. But nonetheless, that's another facet of this exciting initiative that we're doing. And we're partnering with U of M. U of M is our new partner. We have had for the last 15 years, we've had numerous partners and still count them as partners. The University of Detroit Mercy, the Detroit Collaborative Design Center, which is part of the School of Architecture at UD Mercy. We've worked with, over the years, with the University of Windsor, the St. Clair College. We've worked with Oakland University. We're in talks right now with Wayne State University to kind of bring them into the fold. Prior to Marygrove closing, Marygrove actually was one of our first partners. And it's unfortunate that Marygrove College no longer is operating as a college. However, we are excited that we're bringing on board all our new partners, the Detroit schools, and of course the Windsor School District on the Canadian side. And we have quite a few partners in the Canadian government. The Prime Minister of Heritage, Prime Minister of Culture and Heritage, I should say, the Governor General's office. We've got a lot of people on both sides of the river. Mayor Dilkin's office over on the Canadian side is very excited, as well as members of Parliament on the Canadian side. Brian Massey, who is the MP for Windsor Essex, Cheryl Hardcastle, who was the MP for Tecumseh and LaSalle, Tecumseh. And on the American side, we've been very fortunate over the course of the last 15 years. We've been gifted with United States congressional resolutions. So we have the backing of the congressional delegation. We actually have two sets, one from 2011 and one from 2016. And those were forwarded by both Stabenow and Peters, Senator Stabenow and Peters, and the House sign-ons included at the time Hanson Clark and John Conyers, who were both members of Congress at the time. Representative Conyers is now deceased. However, the person that followed him in his district is Rashida Tlaib, one of the squad. And Rashida used to hold meetings in her office many years ago when she was a Michigan State Senator, about 10 years ago. So she's still with us and has a little bit more power. So we're expecting to do great things through Congress and get our resource study done through the National Park Service. But as a National Park Service national partner myself, I'm excited that the Network to Freedom, which is the initiative that I work with the National Park Service, I'm excited that the Network to Freedom, which is the Underground Railroad initiative in the Park Service, is going to get this huge opportunity to add this to its designations. It's been a program that's almost 25 years old now, and it was really exciting when it first started, and it still bears excitement for those of us that are involved. However, I don't think they've gotten as much press and marketing as they should, and maybe this will help them. So, we got a lot of things going on to add to what has happened in the past. The educational curriculum is very, very exciting. That's, like I say, that's something that does not exist anywhere else, is an international curriculum that is intended to be taught in 2 different countries at the same time. So that's a very exciting, piece that's coming out now.
Great. That is exciting and impressive. All the different things that you have, where you're moving towards. And that sort of takes me into this whole cultural term of cancel culture. And it's interesting because people always want to say they're canceling everything. And the question is, are they canceling things? Are they holding people accountable? It depends on who you talk to. But you gave a great response at a presentation that you did for a local group a couple of weeks ago. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you responded to the question when the gentleman asked you, what do you think about cancel culture? And you asked him specifically what he was talking about, and he was referring to the monuments, and what you said your response would be in terms of how you address that.
Well, I think you're speaking of, it was, I think, a talk I did for the local Optimist Club. And I believe one of the members, or a guest, I'm not sure which, literally posed a question to me about, we'll just say the monument question, and in particular, monuments that are actually there that celebrate, commemorate the Civil War, and in particular, the losing side of the Civil War. The question was posed to me. I'm not sure exactly how it I can't quote it exactly, but I will, for just giving you the gist of the question was, how can you forget the history? You taking down monuments, you're actually ignoring the history and doing what he termed cancel culture. You're canceling the history. Now, speaking to someone who is known as a community historian and actually carries a fellowship title from the University of Michigan, and you say to them that they are canceling out history, seems to be probably not true, or that definition is misguided. And I answered the gentleman by saying, which is what I will repeat, if I find it hard to be accused of being a cancel culture believer if what I do every day, I get up in the morning and go to bed at night and think about how to share our history, all of our history, with our children, and for that matter, for their parents, with their parents. So I'm not quite sure why anyone would accuse someone such as myself as being someone who believed in cancel culture. So I then asked him again, I said, well, if you mean, are you talking about the monuments that celebrate slave owners, who were on the losing side, by the way, and they, nothing's changed. They still lost. So his statement was, yes, you're canceling. People believe in taking down the monuments. And my statement to him was, no, I'm not of the taking all the monuments down. The camp that I reside in is, you don't take down everything, because you need to explain why it is up in the first place. And I explained to the gentleman that most of the monuments that were erected on behalf of the Confederate side of the United States Civil War were erected in the 1920s and the 1930s. They were not erected in 1865. They were erected 50 years later by those who were involved in the practice, or in some cases, legal law of Jim Crow. And it was a way not only to, a lot of the monuments were to frighten. They were erected as a power play for those that were not sympathetic to the cause. They were erected as a sign of force against those that were the subject of the insurrection in the first place, the war, and that is those of color. And they were erected after the side that they were celebrating had already lost. So they're celebrating, they're not celebrating heroes, they're actually celebrating traitors to the cause. So I suggested very strongly that if that is who he was talking about, then we must correct our history, because we don't celebrate traitors to the United States. We're supposed to be celebrating our history, our greatness, not our traitors. And again, I said to the gentleman, I don't think that we would get into an argument about taking them down, though there are some that need to come down. And some of those have come down. There are some that are still standing that there's a fight about. And the some that have come down, such as Nathan Bedford Forrest. Nathan Bedford Forrest was a Confederate general, but he also has the distinction of being the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. And yes, his monument came down. However, his face is still plastered on the side of a mountain known as Lookout Mountain in Georgia, along with several others, glorifying the cause of the South. So unless you take that huge monument down off of Lookout Mountain in Georgia, and you'd have to scrub a mountainside clean, that in itself is going nowhere. It's in bas relief, it's going nowhere. However, some of the smaller ones have, and there's a very large one that takes up a very pretentious spot in Virginia. And that is outside of Richmond, and that is the birthplace and the home of the man who sits on the horse, and that's Robert E. Lee. Now, that particular monument, there's a fight going on right now over whether or not to take that down. And I would, if I were in the argument, which I'm not a member of the, I'm not a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But if I had some say over that monument, that's probably one monument I wouldn't take down. And somebody would say, well, why? Robert E. Lee, before the Civil War, was slave owner, was born to a slave owning family. As a matter of fact, born to a family that fought in the Revolutionary War as well. Arlington National Cemetery, which is where all of our honored dead are buried, is the home of the Lee family. That is their home. That is their lands. And it was a way of the United States basically to kind of, if you want to say, that was payback, is to take their land and build upon it a cemetery where everyone is buried to this day. However, before the Civil War, General Lee was a West Pointer. He went to the United States Academy at West Point, the Army Academy at West Point. Was at the top of his class and was considered the greatest statistician from West Point. He was a U.S. Army colonel, lieutenant colonel, and became a general. And he literally had to resign his commission and deny his allegiance, because as a soldier, you swear allegiance to the United States. He had to literally deny his allegiance to the United States to take on the command of the Confederate U.S. Confederate forces. So at the moment that he denied his command in the United States forces and became a Confederate commander, he literally became a traitor. He became a traitor. A man who came from a family that fought in the Revolutionary War became a traitor. So his statue is a very large one, and it's very prominent in, I believe, downtown Richmond, and takes up a whole intersection on a horse. And that still stands. They're still battling over Robert E. Lee. And I would say that if we were going to leave one monument up to leave a legend, an impression, that is the one. However, I would build a companion, maybe not a monument, or maybe so, but I would attach to that site. It would become a significant site of teaching, very significant, because from that point, I think you can teach what the Civil War was all about. There was so many facets beyond the fact that slavery was being fought over, but you had all of these people involved for many reasons. And I think that the fact that Robert E. Lee and the Lee family were so deeply involved in the war between the states, I think that that particular monument should bear witness to why the other monuments should come down. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. The monument, the Lee Monument itself, I think is a significant piece, a significant monument. If I were to choose one monument that should stand, it would be the Lee Monument. I think that it should stand as a testimony of commemorating our story. It's a story that has been used by both sides, the story of the Civil War in ways that perhaps some aren't appropriate, some are. But the Lee Monument, I think, is an opportunity to use monuments such as that to teach. I haven't seen it myself personally, but I've seen pictures of the Lee Monument since last summer during all of the demonstrations surrounding George Floyd's death. May he rest in peace, and the Black Lives Matter. And the Lee Monument has, though the monument is still standing on its pedestal, it has received a washing of graffiti and just not anger, but expression of feelings. And so just because of that, I think the Lee Monument should continue to stand and stand with graffiti that is on it as of this moment. It should stand like that. And then be added to. I think there gives that opportunity to build some sort of a side monument to the monument and teach what really should be discussed is the cancel culture. What does that mean? Somebody needs to explain to me what cancel culture means, because canceling culture to me is what you do when you create monuments in the middle of the 1920s about events that happened in the 1860s that were not necessarily the United States' greatest moment. So you're canceling the culture. To me, if you want to talk about canceling culture, you're canceling what happened for the next 50 years. You're ignoring it. And the next 50 years in the United States, for that matter, for the next 100 years, it has not been pretty. And we're seeing the remnants of it now as we watch a trial in Minneapolis. And in the midst of a trial, you have other major violations of civil rights literally happening within 2 miles of where the trial is being held. It is almost surreal. The fact that the shooting that happened a couple of days ago, a 20-year-old shot, quote unquote, by accident, by someone who accidentally, having been on the force for 25 years, pulled their gun instead of a taser. And once it was out of the holster, I really don't know how you can't tell the difference between a gun and a taser. And because a taser, you have to be on top of a victim,
right?
And a gun, you do not. So it's a surreal moment. The fact that actually would happen, not across the country, literally 2 miles from the courthouse, where a man is being tried. And I think the prosecution has proven quite a case, tried for murdering a man in cold blood in broad daylight in front of many witnesses, both on the scene and on Facebook. He was killed live. It's amazing.
And they have full body cam coverage from start to finish.
Well, yeah, and he was dead 3 minutes before the person that killed him got off of his neck.
Yes.
He was dead for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
On camera. Before the murderer decided he had done enough. That is an amazing statement.
It is.
So it's where we are today.
We are, but I do have a definition for cancel culture, and that's why I brought it up. It says to practice or the tendency of engaging in mass canceling, according to Merriam-Webster. Is defined as a modern tool of ostracism in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles, and we see that politically, or on social media, or in person. Those who are subject to these ostracism are said to have been canceled. So I think part of it is pop culture or pundits or journalists using terminology that's not necessarily correct. Because as you said, if you were canceling culture, then that would mean that 50 years or 100 years of culture would be ignored, even though we might be able to argue that to a certain extent. Most of it is just people saying something and someone not liking what they said and they disagree with it. And so they announce, well, you've been canceled.
Okay. It rides along with the disinformation that has become prevalent in the, we'll just say the conservative right media. There's a lot of everybody on the conservative side and everybody on the liberal side are not necessarily angels when it comes to speaking.
Mhm.
However, we will say that cancel culture has become a catchphrase for the far right.
Mhm.
And they use it to basically claim that the story of America or the story of today, their rights or their thoughts or what they believe in is being quote unquote canceled. And again, I get back to, how can you cancel something? Now you can negate someone's thoughts, and you can create a bubble or a cloud around who they are, and quote unquote, excuse me, cancel their well-being or cancel what they stand for by words or deeds, or at least try to. This is the United States, and one of the things that we do have, to our, either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what day of the week it is and what time, is the First Amendment, and that is the freedom of speech. I find it interesting that they use cancel culture. The far right uses cancel culture as a point to create create some sort of a battle, like a battle cry, cancel culture. And when you use that term, the way that Merriam-Webster says, you're trying to ostracize or cancel out people. And the fact that the far right uses that term so much, and it's the far right that is consistently found to be violent or to create commotion. It was definitely the far right that invaded, the insurrectionists that invaded the capital of the United States in DC on the 6th of January. And if you were to step back and you were lived in another country or on another planet, and you heard one of those people who, out of the thousands, and I think they arrested 362, out of the 362 people who decided it was their right to go take over the United States Congress, the building, and try to find, and God help us, whatever they were going to do to some of the Congress people, and for that matter, the Vice President of the United States. Can you imagine? They were going to the Congress looking for the Vice President of the United States. Like him or not, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, he was the sitting Vice President of the United States, the second most powerful person in the world, and they were determined to find him and hang him. They build a gallows across the street. That in itself is mind-boggling. And then to have those same people use the terminology cancel culture. And it seems to me that they weren't trying to, they were not trying to overcome canceling of their culture. They were literally trying to show the power of the culture that they have to the people who they thought weren't worthy of that, of the having, of being in quote unquote in charge or leading. So I find it very, very disingenuous that a lot of these pundits, as you call them, use this terminology as cancel culture. And as I go back to the gentleman who used that terminology when I was speaking the other day, a couple weeks ago, I think he is like many people who watches some particular websites, reads particular websites, sees particular media channels, has heard that terminology and does not quite know how they're supposed to use it.
Exactly.
Or what it really means. It's like they're being fed that. And so they're fed and they use it as they see fit. I don't know that many have looked it up in Merriam-Webster to see what it really meant and whether or not it should be used in whatever they said, the way they're using it. I don't think so, because it was very funny after that moment happened. Later on in the day, I got a message forwarded to me by another member of the group who were witnessing that, and they forwarded me his message to me that said, basically, he liked my answer. He didn't believe that I was a cancel culturist, and considered what I had to say fairly significant. And that in itself, I wish he had maybe asked me that question or posed that question or statement earlier in the talk, because that hour wasn't long enough to talk about that. And I think we would have maybe solved that whole problem when we got through. So I was told by a couple of people, said he probably asked the wrong person. I said, yeah, today he asked the wrong person, because he got an earful when I said it to him. But anyway, the January 6th, the crowd that was at the United States Congress trying to basically take over the democracy we have here, our republic. I think they were probably expert at being cancelers. They probably were expert at it, I would say. But it's a term that has risen out of this point in time, and I hope somebody defines it properly and has many sessions about what that really means. So,
well, and that's why I brought it up to you, because I knew that you could break it down. One of the last things that I was going to bring up before we finish our interview, there was a conversation that I saw in Florida at a school district where they were talking about renaming 2 high schools. And of course, they were named after Confederate soldiers. And there was this whole notion of it being cancel culture, that they were erasing their history. And again, as you said, you have to understand your history to understand how you fit in, what it actually means, and how to be able to move forward. But even greater than that, the fact that we are still celebrating traitors who lost, who went against the United States at that time because of slavery and other things. It is amazing how in America you see that the Confederate flag is celebrated or commemorated. It is amazing how you see Confederate soldiers who have monuments. As you said, in Georgia, I have been to Stone Mountain and I have actually seen that. And in the summer, they have a light show that they do where they talk about the history of that and they uphold them. And I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, they lost. Like this isn't Mount Rushmore. We aren't celebrating presidents. You're celebrating Confederate soldiers. So it is interesting, and I think it's very important that we continue to have this conversation.
Well, you know, it's hard. The if one thing I will leave, and it's a question to be posed that people need to consider. You know, you hear people say that they were traders, they were slavers and traders. Well, that's not true, because slavery up until 1865 was legal, and it was very lucrative business. So just because you were an enslaver, you weren't doing anything illegal. That was legal. So, however, it was immoral. Or I should say, we look at it now as being immoral. Because in 1865, not only was it illegal, and perhaps if you were a person who believed in people, everyone created equal, such as our Declaration of Independence says, then you as a slave owner definitely were playing two ends against the middle, because that's not true. However, you can't call those that held slaves as being a traitor, because that's not true. Or or doing anything illegal, because it was a legal, lucrative business that whose end results, the economic development for many, many, many families, the old families here, the money they have now was driven through, a lot of it through slavery. So you can't call the person who had slaves a traitor, but you can call someone such as, we'll use, like I said, he's a great example, whose name was Robert E. Lee, who renounced his American citizenship to join to command an army of insurrectionists and, quote, traitors, who had sworn allegiance as a general, a commander in the United States Army, went to West Point. He was a slave owner. However, that is not what made him a traitor. A traitor became, he was commanding an army against the United States. That made him a traitor. But the cause of the war was slavery. That is what it was for. The fight in the Civil War. Everybody, I've heard, you hear people say all the time, oh, no, 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 it was about states' rights. That is a lie. And anyone that goes back, if you want to really know your history, you should go back and read the convention that was that the Confederate States held, and read some of the commentary about why they were seceding from the Union. In particular, Mr. Calhoun from the state of South Carolina, who was always last to leave, last to give out there, say, yeah, they're going to do something, and the first to jump on the wrong train. Anyway, you need to read that and find out, because it says very basically in the transcripts of what was said leading up to the Civil War by those in the South or those that seceded, you will find in their statements, they are very definitely telling you that they are fighting over their right to hold human property. There's no guesswork about that. And they weren't doing it because they like to hold human property, though I think in some cases, yes, that's evil. That was. However, that was a way of life. And it was economically enriching, very much so. So the whole thing about, whether or not you should own another human being goes right out the window when you start talking about money. It has since those 30 pieces of silver and before.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it is. What is it going to get me? Money. So we can't call General Lee a traitor because of, or anybody else that fought in the Civil War because they owned slaves, because that's not what made them a traitor. What made them a traitor is they were fighting against the United States of America. That was what made them a traitor. The holding someone enslaved makes you an immoral person now. But then it was a lucrative business. That is one of the many mysteries. That is what the United States still, that question needs to be pondered in 2021, because we still are fighting over what slavery meant and what it didn't, because we still have Black people, white people, all kinds of different people still battling over the fact that slavery was, quote unquote, at that time, it will always be immoral, but we don't really investigate the fact that the reason it was happening is it wasn't because someone wanted to own another person per se. That was the end result of what they did.
Right.
They wanted cheap labor to get rich. And this was the business. And it was the business of the United States. Slavery was in 50, well, we didn't have 50 states then, but slavery was the business, the biggest business in the United States. And we can stop with all the other lying, because that is not anything you put up against that is a lie. The United States was in the business of slavery. That is what we did. And then the profits from that. It's very simple. So hence I go back to Robert E. Lee's statue should stand where it is. It's a testament to who we are, truly.
Thank you for that correction. So, Kim, it has been a fascinating time. We always learn so much with you. But before we go, tell us where we can find you. Tell us how we can sign up for the camp, whether it's virtual or physical this summer, and any other information that you would like to share.
Well, you can always email me specifically, and that's DetroitRiverProject@gmail.com. I can be found at the other end of that email. The DetroitRiverProject.com website is currently under reestablishment, we'll say. It is taken, it's down, but it should be back up by the end of the week. So Friday the 16th is a good time to go look on the DetroitRiverProject.com website, and always on Facebook. Detroit River Project has a Facebook page that we will be delighted that you access and leave your comments. And we are also on both Instagram and Twitter as Detroit River Project.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Kim, for coming on the Kim B. Davis Show and talking to us about history and giving us the true definition of what cancel culture should be, and talking to us about how we should really be looking at history. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. You know, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and TikTok under Kimberly Batchelor Davis, and Batchelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can find out more information at kimbdavis.com. You can also see this show on youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can also listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher. And as always, remember, be magnificent.